Title: The Weight of Spores. I'll remember the day it all shattered. I stood at the edge of the family gathering, the laughter of my relatives bouncing off the walls like shards of glass. They were celebrating the latest promotions, the new homes, the standard highlights of ordinary life. I should have felt joy, but all I felt was the simmering heat of betrayal as my uncle leaned back in his chair, drunk on pride and wine, and said it. "We all know Daniel's lost it. Haunted fungi?" What a ridiculous obsession. Laughter erupted, and they didn't stop when I tried to explain. How could they? They didn't care to see the truth I was unveiling beneath the decaying facades of forgotten towns, the sentient molds and ancient spores that thrived on despair and decay. No, they preferred the comfort of ignorance over the unsettling tales I had unearthed. I was a disgrace, a stain on the Blackman name. Years later, after I was driven out, I plunged deep into the darkness of my research, abandoning the world they cherished for the one I had come to understand. I became known as the Mold Keeper, heralded by those who understood what lurked beneath our feet, and reviled by those clinging to the illusion of safety. My findings had made me a legend among the few who dared to peer into the abyss. Yet they branded me a pariah among the many who could not bear the weight of truth. That horrifying knowledge was now a part of me. I could feel it crawling beneath my skin, whispering dark secrets, waiting for the moment when I would once again confront my family. I returned home in the dead of winter, the landscape draped in a pallid shroud of snow, as if nature itself recoiled from the memory of my existence. I stood before the worn structure of my childhood home, feeling its creaking bones sigh with the nostalgia of long-forgotten memories. Something had shifted. I could feel it in the air, like the moment before a storm, pregnant with unspoken dread. My mother opened the door, her face a mask of disbelief and suppressed dread. "Daniel," she breathed, as if surprised that I still existed. The ache in her voice knotted my stomach. "We need to talk," I said, stepping inside. The warmth enveloped me, but it felt heavy, like an oppressive shroud. I looked around, taking in the outdated trinkets, the family portraits. And then I saw it. A crack in the wall, a faint yellow-green stain that threatened to spread like a whisper of my past. "Is everything okay?" she asked, crossing her arms, a defensive posture that reminded me of the day I was cast out. "Not really," I replied, my voice low, gravelly, thick with the weight of what I carried. "I've come to warn you." "About what?" she replied, eyes narrowing, skepticism washing over her features. I took a breath, feeling the spores of ancient knowledge twisting in my lungs. "The mold, the kinds you laughed at, it's not just a joke. It's alive, and it's hungry." She smirked, a cruel tilt of her lips. "You can't be serious. Haven't you come up with enough nonsense?" Her words were a dagger. I could see my father rising from the corner of the room, his eyes darting between disbelief and concern. "Daniel, we need to understand this," he said, his tone softer than my mother's, but still laced with doubt. "I was right," I hissed, my voice taking on an urgent resonance. "Remember the outbreak? The toxic mold? I wasn't to blame. I was merely the first to uncover its hidden nature. I've seen it, felt its hunger. It's more than just a spore. It can invade and manipulate. It can change you." The air grew still, the atmosphere thickening with unspoken fears. Suddenly, a noise cut through the silence, a low, damp rustling, like the sound of wet leaves in autumn, rising from the crack in the wall. I froze, breathing heavily, as the crack widened. Dark, ropey tendrils slipped out, curling and reaching in a slow, deliberate dance. "Please, you need to listen," I whispered urgently, but the sight made them recoil. "What in God's name is that?" my father yelled, taking a step back, eyes wide with disbelief, It's here! It's come for you, I said, stepping between them and the encroaching horror. But the confusion on their faces turned to panic as the long, sinewy growths crawled forward, pulling in the dust and darkness of the room. "You're insane," my mother spat, but I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. "Am I?" I challenged. "Am I?" The horror crested around us, tendrils stretching as if searching for something more than just physical flesh. The walls vibrated with the echo of countless whispers, each murmur a fragmented memory of despair, a life claimed, a soul lost. "It needs hosts," I whispered, the words heavy with dread. "It feeds on disbelief, on ignorance." With each word, the dark tendrils pulsed closer, seizing the air, wrapping around my family's legs, their knees buckling as the realities of their mockery crystallized before them. "Daniel!" my father shouted, but the room had become a living nightmare. The creeping mold revealing its true nature, a punishment for ignorance. In that suffocating haze, I knew I had to act. I grasped a tightly sealed jar from my coat, a necrospore I had cultivated, alive with the energy of the very essence that clung to the darkness. "You must understand," I pleaded, forcing the jar into their hands. "You'll have to face it. You'll have to confront what you rejected." Desperation gleamed in my mother's eyes as the mold writhed, growing more aggressive, pulling at her flesh as it sought sympathy from the living. She caught my gaze, and in that moment, she finally saw the truth that had been hidden behind their mocking laughter. With one final push, they hurled the jar toward the tendrils, a shattering of glass, followed by a brimming cloud of spores that exploded into the air. The darkness recoiled, the tendrils shriveling, a wail echoing in the shadows as they dissolved into the swirling mist. "What have we done?" my mother breathed, tears streaming down her face, the veil with ignorance torn asunder. They had mocked the truth, and now they faced the horror they thought they could control. As the air cleared, the mold retreated, leaving nothing but a stain, a permanent reminder of their disbelief. My family stood shattered in the aftermath, a cruel tableau of what it meant to dismiss the unseen. "Now you believe me," I whispered, my heart heavy with a combination of triumph and sorrow. The darkness had been quelled, but it had left its mark, and I knew that our relationship would never be the same. The weight of my discoveries, the price of my obsession, it was now an immutable bond forged in terrifying truth. As I walked away from the home I once had, I felt the shadows follow me, a reminder of what I had survived, a punishment that would haunt them forever. They had learned too late that the real monsters are not the things that lurk in the dark, but the ones blind to their existence.